I don't know. Do you want to start the podcast?
No, we're not going to talk about that. I'm talking about this Sunday. We're not going to blindside.
This isn't
Doug
coming
with
out
that
until
topic.
after this Sunday, so it's like it's gonna be fine.
We have a guest. We're gonna handle it like we handle it. You do what you do. Do what you want.
Welcome.
You know I just follow along.
Welcome to Let the Bible Speak.
Are we started?
Where that's what we want to do.
Do you have any more calls?
Oh,
we
my
want,
goodness.
We want to let the Bible speak.
All right.
There are a lot of different voices and things that would influence us in this world, but God has not left us without a book to give us guidance and to show us which way to go. And so my name is Josh Elder. Mm-hmm. Henderson is not here today, unfortunately, but we have almost as good a person in John.
No. That was at me. That wasn't at you.
No.
Oh, you were insulting our guest?
No, I was insulting you.
That's what I was just saying.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
This has already come off the wheels.
Well, you know what? Look, I think it was just important that we got into it. You know what I mean?
Do you remember that one? Do you remember that one that we were kind of arguing before, and I left it in purposely? Like we were just debating, but we were debating. I forgot what it was.
It was a back and forth.
It was you, me, and Henderson. I think we were kind of arguing before we started rolling, and I left it in on purpose.
Look,
while the music was playing, you could hear us like, I don't think that's right. I think it's this.
People don't always know that we have a lot of good discussion before
the podcast before the podcast.
In fact, it's really hard because I feel like John wants to bring the greatest topics up before the podcast. And I'm like, wait, please don't. Let's not waste this here when it's not being recorded.
I don't consider discussion with you a waste, Josh.
Well, you know what I mean. I just wanted to include everybody in this.
Yeah.
So John is here with us, John William Sullivan Chetta.
Yes. Good job.
And also, John, do you want to introduce our special guest?
I will do that. Yes. I will do that. So I'm really excited. We have a special guest with us today, and that special is meant in many ways, but very special to me. This is the man who raised me since I was four. So this is my dad. This is Doug. And do you want to? What do you want? How do you want to approach this?
What do you mean?
Well, okay, so I have been like debating because you have a long history in the police force, but you also have a long history in carpentry, and I was trying to figure out how I could marry those two together in this and discuss it because both they're equally.
Well, people might also notice that Doug has a accent. And
such an American.
All I'm saying is before
it depends where you're from.
Right. Exactly. Actually, our listeners in the UK are probably going, "No, you're the one with the accent." So,
for sure.
And there's just a few. We have a few, but they are dedicated, and they're always little. It shows up on our map with little yellow marks. And
we have a presence in Singapore.
Yeah. Australia has disappeared again, and they've stopped listening.
That's because you keep talking about it.
That's okay. We're going to get them back. It's going to be great.
All right.
So where are you originally from, Doug?
Little town just west of London called High Wycombe. If I'm anywhere here, somebody says, where are you from? I say close to London. I mean, it's like if you were anywhere else in the world and somebody said, where do you live? You'd say, oh, close to New Orleans.
Yeah, that's always.
If you said Mandeville, they'd be, huh?
Right,
so
exactly.
They'd have no clue. So, yeah, close to London.
How far from London is it?
It's very similar to Mandeville and Covington Arts and New Orleans, about 30 miles away.
Okay.
More or less on the outskirts of London. When you get to London itself, then London just keeps going and going and going till you get to the city of London. But, yeah, about 30 miles, really, from the outskirts of the metro area.
I always tell people it's like Mandeville is to New Orleans.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So you met this man when he was a 4-year-old boy.
Yes.
Little child.
Yes.
You've known him through everything.
Let's call it thick and thin.
Thick and thin.
Yeah.
So like we often, we are always telling our parts of the story of testimonies and stuff like that. And I think we can talk about a lot of what you're saying with carpentry and being a police officer and all that kind of stuff. But I want to ask him a question.
Okay.
Which is when John talks about his testimony. Is he grossly exaggerating, or is he being?
He's understating.
Okay, there it is.
Oh, I lived it.
That's what I was just saying.
I was
Yeah, he
wondering where
needs,
you were
he
gonna
needs
go
to
with
move
that.
the decimal point one place to the right, maybe two.
The loved ones are the ones that suffer the most oftentimes.
Oh,
It is true.
You know.
It is true. And, there's also to the extent that I even revealed outwardly, I was probably worse off than people realized. you know,
Yeah.
to some extent.
And so one of the things that people may not know about Doug. No, I wasn't struggling on the name.
He forgets my name. He
Yes.
forgets everybody's name.
That wasn't at all. Doug, I never forget Doug's
That's
name.
actually true. I don't think you ever have.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I've
Okay.
forgotten your name.
And my
I've
child's.
forgotten Lauren's name.
Yes.
But my wife. But
Yeah.
I have not forgotten Doug's name.
Well, that's
so-
because you call her woman, usually, just to be biblical.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He's a traditionalist.
Thank you. So we have in my house, we have a beautiful table that was made by a master carpenter.
I forgot about
And we were just talking about it before the podcast because I have a family, I have 5 kids. And so anything in our house does not take long to be destroyed. So whenever we get anything, whether it's a couch or whatever, we try to find the most sturdy, like our couch is made of this like tweed
Rhino skin.
Yeah, it's like
It has to be.
yeah, the
But
stuff
the
that
ne-
you can pour
The
on.
next step from the tweed is barbed wire.
Exactly. It's one down, not comfortable but sturdy.
Yeah.
And but we have this beautiful table that is a large table. We never had a table that was really easily fit all of us around the table, and we got this beautiful table made by a master carpenter who is on our podcast today. And
Thank you.
one of the questions I had for you is how did you get into carpentry? Because you are literally a master carpenter.
I was classically trained in England. I went through a formal apprenticeship, did 3 years college, and in the workplace. I was taught by master craftsmen and worked on some fantastic pieces and some very fine work, and learned, I think, the best way possible. I was in high school. I like to call myself the strongest student there, and the reason I was so strong because academically I held everybody else above me.
Yeah, very nice.
You realize what
That
that,
was-
means
that
about
was
my
a good
academical
I like that.
academic
have to
pursuits
remember
were horrible. They were terrible. I was a terrible student.
They
in high
couldn't be
school.
in their place without me and my
Holding
place.
them
No,
up
I was
to their
holding
heights.
everybody above.
yeah.
I did a stellar job. In fact, there was quite a distance between myself and them.
Bolstering the curve since 1965.
No, I was terrible. I hated high school. Hated it with a passion. Got out of high school and I
Did you
loved-
play any sports in high school?
Oh, yeah, I was good.
What?
I was very good.
what-
Rugby.
Rugby.
And athletics. I went to a high school that didn't play soccer, much to my disgust.
Yeah.
Didn't think about that until afterwards, but I wanted to go to the best school, and I did. I went to the best one. It was fantastic.
I'm so glad that you've been here long enough in this country to call it the proper name of soccer. I'm just kidding. I'm going to see how many stereotypes and international issues I can bring up in the
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
the
please do,
podcast
please do,
Yeah,
for
sure.
football. I'm sorry.
Now
football.
you've played some rugby.
Yeah, I love. Well, okay. So I played a little bit of rugby when I was up in Shreveport. It was a military base, Barksdale Air Force Base, and they had these rugby clubs that were playing all the time. And I was like, I'd like to get some exercise and go play. And I was like, I guess 20, 24, something like that. And so I went out and played with them and learned, not that much. I didn't play very long, except at one point we were just playing touch and I thought we were playing full and I hit somebody and he got real mad at me and all this kind of stuff. That happened one time. But when we came to Mandeville, there was a Chad from our from church was like, come out and play rugby with us. It was just 2-hand touch rugby, not real rugby. And that was the last time I ever saw Chad play, but I kept playing. And then I went to a real game and played in a real game. and learned that
Didn't you separate your shoulder?
yeah, I hit the earth.
Yeah.
I hit the biggest opponent you could possibly hit, which is the ground. And
I think I remember
I was
when
gonna
you
say,
first,
yeah.
because we were attending St. Timothy's at the time, and I don't know if I may be wrong on this, but correct me if so. I thought I may have actually told you, make sure you get steel toe cap boots.
yes, you did. You did.
Did you get them?
No,
Oh.
because I
did you
did
regret that?
I only yes. Well, that was a great piece of advice, and but I only played that once because I really literally dislocated my shoulder, and when it came back in, it was a real bad. I had to rehab it for months, and so then finally, when I went back, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm not ready for the real deal, and I'll just play the two-hand touch stuff. But
Do you still do that?
yeah.
Okay.
In fact, if we have numbers tonight, I'll be playing a little two-hand touch with probably like 10 guys, if we can get 10, hopefully, because it gets harder and harder. Rugby's so hard as the numbers go down.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more running and there's a lot more you got to do as the shorter number, especially if you play like rugby sevens, or you would be rugby fives, which would be much worse.
Much worse as you're running all the time.
Yeah, the good thing about
So-
some rugby is that I played football. That's the real soccer.
Ah,
I played
there
football.
it is. There it is.
Footy.
I was like, they
And-
brought
but I was
football over. That was
I
wonderful.
was not very good. I
Okay.
was just, I love playing it. I was nothing but a Sunday leaguer and not a very good one at that. But I was much better at rugby. My physical attributes were much more in tune to that. But then talking about the shoes, I thought, of course, rugby, football, I mean, they use cleats. I can use them. And when you use those same cleats without the steel toe, I found out after the first couple of rugby games when I thought I had like 6 broken toes,
Oh,
it was agony. And I know that somebody who's just getting into it, you've got to have steel toe cap boots, otherwise you are going to severely be hurt on your feet.
yeah, yeah. And I still like, even though I've played for years, two hand touch, but I love watching it. I mean, I love the skill. The skill set of rugby is just, people don't even know. Like, I mean, I know it's a very popular sport worldwide.
Yeah.
But in the U.S., it just hasn't gotten as much.
I think it will in time, and I think when you look at the depth of athletic ability here, it's going to be phenomenal when it really takes off.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think America, though, will become a force, but it's going to take several generations for that to happen.
Yeah, and this is to anybody who's listening to us locally. Anytime you can,
Like locally, if you want to show up at this field at this time,
No. Well, you can. Tuesday nights usually on. But
don't tell people where to find you, Josh.
Okay. Well, New Orleans.
I mean, you're
has
kind of a big deal. You don't need to give people that information for your own
Exactly.
safety, Josh.
Look, a kid asked to take a picture with me this morning. Is all I'm saying. You know, like I told him.
He
no,
recognized you
thank
from Cops?
No, thank you. He was a junior high kid trying to make fun of me, and so you know,
my youth got me on one of those.
really.
To give me I want the money or whatever.
I don't know what is that. So he was going to do something.
That's what it was. I'm sure.
I saw it in his face. A mile.
Yeah.
He comes up, and then my daughter
Little
tries to
feral
convince me.
kid.
She's like, "No, he was serious. He was." I was like, "Look, Haley, I was this age once."
This is the stupidest thing, and I don't like using the word stupid, but unless it's about behavior, in which I'm like, that's stupid.
Right.
But
Stupid is as stupid does.
one of my youth comes up to me and says, "Hey, can you do a video with us?" And this is at church, and so I'm like, "You wouldn't do anything to make me look silly." So
did you have red flags going off in your head as they asked this, or did you just completely go into it?
I don't know what I was thinking. I knew
Yeah.
something was amiss.
Amiss, yeah.
But I didn't know what it was. And so anyway, it is kind of stupid though. It's not really that funny, which is annoying. If it were really funny, okay. But so what it is you get like a group of people. Hey, if you're listening to this, most likely you have kids. Don't fall for this. So what they do is they get like 3 people in a line and they'll include you. And they're like, all right, we're doing this video. It's this viral thing going around. You have to say, and it's something like, I want the money, or something like, but you put on this really offensive Italian, caricature, and you got to do this thing. And so it's one after the other does it. And after, I want the money, everybody claps and cheers. And so it's one, then the other, and it builds. And then you're the last one. And you do, I want the money, and everybody just looks at you. Nobody claps. And it's supposed to like be forced awkwardness or whatever.
And they cut out the front end? Is that
No. You see, everybody. No, it's like you're pranking somebody. It's
Okay.
not. That's what I'm saying. it is not well crafted.
Yeah.
But it is viral.
Really?
Yeah.
And so they don't cut off the front end. I feel like
it.
it'd be funny if they cut off the front end and just had you going, I want the money, and
Well,
nobody.
Everybody just looking at you like you're a Looney Tune.
What is wrong?
Yeah.
with you?
So of course I'm immediately like, delete that.
Yeah.
I want to see it now deleted.
Did they?
I don't know.
Okay.
Probably not.
Well,
Anyway,
so
I'm sorry.
Where did we
We
get
can
off?
tell
Children.
Henderson isn't here this week.
Yeah,
because
this is
we
what
are
happens.
way off.
Once we got off.
We were going to, how did I get to the point where into carpentry?
Yeah.
and stuff? I got out of high school, and I was so happy to be out of high school. And then I said, this is fantastic, great. Now what? I had no clue what to do. My mother actually said, you need to get a trade. Once you got a trade with your hands, you can do something with your hands. You can always support yourself. So she said, we're going to send you in this direction. And she got me an interview. I went along. She spoke more than I did. So she really got me the job.
Wow.
And she was a hairdresser. She had her own hair salon. So she had a trade she always could fall back on. And she actually used that most of her life. So I got into it that way. And that's how I just followed it. And when I came to this country,
were you doing it when you came here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, still.
Because, I mean, when I first came here in 1986, I say first, I used to live here when I was a little boy for about 3 years, back in 1970, 71, 72, 73, somewhere around that area.
Okay.
And I lived over here. When I came back in 86, I was 21 years old. And there was no work here. There was very little work. So I was just able to get something at minimum wage. And it was horrible, but at least it was a job I could support myself somewhat.
Yeah.
So, but I've done it, and I did it over in Orlando, and I've done it now that I've retired from the police department, so I've fallen back onto it, and I've just kind of do it on my terms, so I enjoy it that way.
Didn't you? I have this memory from childhood, but
It's probably false.
I've repeated it, so I hope it's not
probably
false.
made
I
up.
hope it's not false, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. When you were building sets for Nickelodeon or Universal?
Disney, huh? Wasn't it Disney?
We did a lot of stuff. I did a lot of stuff. I say a lot of stuff. I did some stuff for Nickelodeon.
Right.
We did stuff for Disney.
There was that one that was.
We did stuff for road shows. We did stuff. Mostly what we did was industrials. In other words, a big convention would come in town. They'd have a set and stage, and that's mostly what we did. But we did do stuff for the theme parks and.
But there was one show in particular that people know, like, and remember from their childhood. I was talking about
Double Dare.
Was it? No, it wasn't Double.
You did Double Dare?
I did some of the sets and stages on that in Nickelodeon.
Come
No,
on.
but you have the same
And there
reaction.
was very-
we
there
didn't
were-
realize we had a famous person on this show.
Yeah, right. There were variations on Double Dare, and it was a Double Dare or one
Legend
of those
the Hidden Temple.
something like
Legend
that.
of the Hidden Temple.
It could be one of those.
It was like a wall. It was like a rock wall, like with a face. It was like this kind of like monument looking thing.
Which is like a really, from what I could understand, I never watched it, but it was more of a theme on Double Dare or something.
Yeah.
Just a variation of it. In fact, some of the ropes in my shop are from that set, and I still have them. So some of them you may have seen people using.
I was
on
talking
set.
about that show the
Still
other
have them in the
day, and
shop.
I was like, "Yeah, Doug actually helped build that set."
Yep.
So most of the time, then you would make these things, but you would not like watch the show or anything after this.
No interest.
You didn't
None.
I just was look. If you made something and it was on a TV show, I'd be like, "All right, everybody, get your popcorn." I made that.
Yeah.
I made that right there.
Right. Yeah.
You know
I see
what I'm saying? Like,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So
No, we didn't have Double Dare watch parties at the.
I'd seen enough of that set by the time I'd finished it.
You were ready not to see it again.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did so you started in carpentry, but how did you get into set building? Like, did somebody just be like, we need a carpenter?
It's a variation of.
Okay.
So in other words, you're still using basically the same skills of how to measure, cut, and build and put something together. So it's just it's a variation.
What is it that you like? What is it that you find most fulfilling about carpentry?
Oh, I got a question after that too.
Ooh, the creative, pushing myself to do something I haven't done before. I'm very good at somebody will ask me a question. Can you do this? Oh yes. And when they're out of sight, how the heck am I going to do that?
Kind of like how you learn how to play chess.
Exactly. That's a very good point. When I was in elementary school or middle school, we had a chess competition. And I was about 9-10 years old at the time, I think 10. And I entered the chess competition because all my friends had entered the chess competition. And then I suddenly got to the realization that I can't play chess. That probably wasn't a very wise move, was it?
Yeah.
So I went to the principal with cap in hand, so to speak, and said, Second thoughts, I probably won't do that. He said, no, you're in it. Oh. So what am I going to do? I don't know how to move the pieces, so I had to go home. And fortunately, we had an encyclopedia that said how all the pieces move. So I knew the horse went up 2 and across 1. I knew the pawns only went 1, but they could go 2 on the first move. So I knew how everything moved. Of course, I had no earthly concept of any strategy whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was drawn in the first round against the eventual winner, Louise Lyle, if you're listening.
If you're listening.
She was just a brilliant
Shout
little
out.
chess player.
Yeah.
And I think...
Right as that, let the Bible speak.
Yeah. I think within 20 moves, I was toast.
Yeah.
If it took that long, but I had no clue. So, but yeah, I like to sometimes jump into things I've never done before. So when somebody recently asked me to build a certain type of desk with epoxy, I won't go into details, but I said, yeah, sure, I can do that. I know I've got the skills to do it, but I've never done it that way. So yeah, it did. And if I told you how much, because there was a lot of work involved, if I told you how much the desk cost, you'd say, oh, wow, you must have made a lot of money. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Because when
the wood
all the
could be-
material, all the time it took to do it, it was very, very in-depth and involved.
Yeah.
You know, let's say I charged $10 for it. You think, oh, wow, that's a lot of money. I mean, there was probably $5 of materials, and that sounds like, oh, you made $5. Yeah, but it took me probably about a month to build the darn thing.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, so the sense of completion and the satisfaction of when you look at it and say, done.
Yeah.
And when you deliver it and you got a customer that's just doing backflips and they're happy, and that feels awesome.
And I think too, like there's an artistry to it, you know, like when we buy the piecemeal little, you know, IKEA or whatever, you know, kind of stuff that just is pressboard, pre-made, you know. There's not a lot of, but when you see something that is like genuinely, like that table that you made for us, that's a work of art. It's a beautiful piece of, you know, you can see somebody's.
It's crazy as he really picked it up from Costco right
He's
before
like,
we got there.
absolutely. Actually, here the truth will come out now.
John, there's a
that
sticker
is
on
an
the underside.
Aikido.
Can you peel that sticker off for me? No,
exactly. Get the
there is
price tag off.
there's a lot of satisfaction that comes from the experience of working with the wood, understanding the wood, and knowing what it can and can't do, what you should and shouldn't do.
Yeah.
So that just comes with time and experience.
My question to you was this, and I'm sure you've thought about it before, but so we believe that Jesus was a carpenter. We know his father was, for sure, and he would have learned the trade from his father. Out of all of the possibilities in the universe of which God in the flesh, God incarnate, could come and be a part of a person, he chose to be a carpenter's son and probably learn the trade of carpentry himself. Why do you think that might be? Like, as a carpenter, why would you think God might have?
I think there's just as good a chance, in all honesty, that he could have been a stonemason. He could have been a farmer. I think he was brought to just the standard level of people. He wasn't given to royalty.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't anything that was given this crown to start life with. And I think the whole reason you can relate and understand about the Bible and about Jesus is because he is one of us, so to speak.
Yeah.
He is not. It's very hard to relate to, in all honesty, people in modern day. You think of Elon Musk.
Right.
You know, you think of Kamala Harris, Donald Trump recently with the election. You can't relate with these people because of the level they're on. And people that are born into that,
right,
it's very hard to relate. But somebody that was born at that level, it speaks to all of us. It wouldn't. I don't think it would have worked any other way.
Yeah,
I think that's a good point, and I like how you said that you could see the same. I take it slightly different. Or like my view of it is a little different, but I think a craftsman in general, like whatever the craft is, but I think there's something kind of magical about taking something from its base state, and making something beautiful out of it, or taking something broken and having the ability to make it beautiful again or into something completely new and beautiful. You know, like there's something that process to me, I think, is very much something of the Heavenly Father.
I can see both of that. I mean, in fact, we're probably constructing a good sermon right now, since you've given one
Not
point.
if one of us
You've
preaches
given
it,
another
but-
point. No. I mean, like, it's literally, it's perfect. But I think of what you just said, Doug, because I think it's a common theme throughout the Scripture where God takes those of regular, or seen as, like David was a shepherd boy. Out of all
the
of the
least of his brothers.
the least
in
of his
fact.
brothers, and Gideon said, "Why me, the least of the
Hiding
least
out in a
of the
hole in the ground."
the clans?" And so there's something about the fact of what you just said that's absolutely confirmed.
And then there's also, I mean, there's a lot of measurement and involved. I think there's precision, there's intention, there's I don't know.
And that was
I don't
for
have
your
a hard
point,
time at all
for your
seeing
point.
the parallels
One of the things that
between-
you can see the divine too, because for your point, the Scripture says that God was the potter and we were the clay.
Yeah.
And so then, there's a very much a created where we are participating in creation. When we
I
get to
always
do something
liked
like that.
they said that that the Scripture says that God spoke everything into existence, but when it came to us, He
molded
crafted
us. He crafted
with His
us.
hands.
Yeah.
He made us from the dirt. There's
From the
something
dirt.
about that is there's a reason why people are set apart.
Yeah.
And I think it starts from the creation.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. And so, I mean, it's cool to see that even in something we would think of as simple, of being a carpenter, but there's something of God in that, not just the relationship to Jesus, but also in the creation, in the taking something, just like you said, John. And
No, you feel free to just take all my points.
well, I
and
want
use
to take it and make it better.
There
That's
you-
what I like to
Yeah,
do.
and a little
It's like I kind
seasoning.
of like
just need a salt.
I'm like listening to sermons, and I'll be like, yeah, right there at that point, that's where I'd push. You know, you ever get that when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
listening to somebody
For
else's
sure.
sermon?
I mean, anytime
And-
I check out. Oh, I'm sorry, but
St. Timothy. Yeah, you're like, anytime I hear you.
Well, when you have material and you're working with, like, I work with a lot of Cinca cypress because it's indigenous to this area. For those that don't know, Cinca cypress is a cypress tree that was cut down 150 years ago. They tried to float it across the Lake Pontchartrain or down a river, and they were going to then turn it into furniture or building supplies. Dimensional lumber for construction, say 150 years ago. But some of those logs sank, and when they did, it's a sinking cypress log. So Cinca cypress, you bring it up 150 years later, and it's got great characteristics to the color and just to the texture of everything. So it's fantastic. But some of the features of the wood when you get it are just phenomenal, and there are so many pieces. I quite often have little pieces of scrap, but I don't want to throw them away.
Yeah.
Because I can see the creation of it, and that's what the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And that's I just
a
love
lot
that.
of
I
deep-
love that, being able to use that and interpret it, and then put it into something and highlight the difference.
Yeah.
You know, I've built stuff for people, and I've had people that say, I don't understand. They all come to me and they want a custom piece, but they want me to then make it into as cookie cutter as a thing as possible. Which I kind of say, you're the boss. I'll do whatever you want.
Right,
But part of
right.
me says, surely if you're going to have something custom, you want something with flair.
Yeah.
Something that stands out.
can you
something
make
that's
this from
different.
Sinker cypress and paint it gray?
right. Put some
Whatever.
particle board on top
Yeah,
and on
yeah.
bottom.
Some
and,
formica. Just
Yeah.
why are those rough edges there? Can't we just?
Yeah. Oh man, 100%. So how did you get from?
I don't even think we announced. Did I say it?
Did you say what?
His the career he retired from.
I think you did.
Did I?
think.
We've mentioned it. At
I
some
think.
point in
I don't
time.
know. It's
Yeah.
somebody.
In
It
the
might have been
podcast?
before. This is what I'm saying.
So
Is
yeah,
when we start
how
talking
did you come up with the
before
stage
podcast,
name Dark
you
Thunder?
Never know what you're doing.
No, I'm kidding.
What did you say?
I said, how did he come up with the stage name Dark Thunder? No. So how long? So you retired from being deputy chief of Covington Police Department, right?
Yes.
How long were you in the police force?
Total of 22 years, full time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So how did you go from being a carpenter and then going, you know what I want to do? I want to be in the police force.
Always wanted to.
Really?
It's something I always wanted to do. I tried to do it in England, but I was refused.
Yeah.
I put an application in. They said, nope, don't want you.
Was that because of your public artistry?
No, I don't think they knew about it
Oh,
at
okay.
that time.
It was
a
actually
graffiti
his
artist.
tendency towards terrible violence.
He was in a gang of graffiti artists. Bombers.
Urban Bombers.
Urban Bombers.
Which
that's true.
was at that time a fine name. Now it's, of course, completely
yeah.
verboten. That's not a good name to have at all.
Sure.
You might be on a watch list with the
That's
FBI.
true. That's
You
true.
might be now.
We just lost YouTube.
Really, all of our guests
There you
can
go.
find themselves on a list somewhere.
Yeah. So wait, you really did? You were a graffiti artist?
I was.
That's
I
what
was a
it
graffiti artist.
Wow.
Yeah. When the breakdancing hip hop thing first started, I pretended to breakdance, almost as bad as Raygun.
Nice.
Almost as bad.
Nice. For our people in Australia, she was Australian, right?
Who?
Raygun?
Raygun, yes.
Yeah.
That's the Olympian?
Yeah, she was.
That was the most
Hey,
embarrassing.
we're not.
Hey,
yeah.
Australia,
That
we
was
don't want to
Australia.
lose
We
you.
don't
if
want to.
you're-
We don't want to lose you.
We don't want to lose you. If you're listening in
But-
Australia,
Come on, we got to be honest.
but whoa.
I mean, we all could do that. Like that, like that. We'd all like to go to
Yeah,
the
that was
Olympics
Ministry
and
of Silly
participate.
Walks.
Right.
That was not
exactly.
breakdance. Anyway.
I can't help but think 99.9% of Australians were just, please, turn it off. This has nothing to do with us. It was awful.
Didn't she even do like a kangaroo
Yes,
hop
she did.
at one point?
She did.
She kind of become a cultural.
cliche.
She's kind of become a cultural icon too, because like.
Do you know she just announced she retired?
Oh really?
She just today, I believe, has announced that she has retired from breakdancing.
She has so much left to give, though. I don't feel like. I'm sorry. You're right.
Yeah.
Sister in Christ.
Right. Exactly.
Who probably took advantage of. Anyway. Whatever.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Who was like,
There was
wait,
some-
free trip?
There was some not great things in that story, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't know any of it for a fact, and I don't want to have to.
No, I don't.
I don't want to
know.
like do a second episode where we have to like
Right, go be
correct
like,
ourselves
listen,
like we
and
did.
we've done this before, where we would
We've done it.
apologize the next episode and have a long discussion on why we spoke too quickly.
And we don't have Hunter to berate, so you know.
Exactly, we can't blame him anymore.
So you were so during the breakdance hip hop emergence, you were
I
Started to
was.
tag.
We were doing like a little graffiti club team, whatever you want to call them, crew. So yeah, I did that for a while. Loved doing that because I do have a very artistic side to me.
yeah.
Yes.
So I enjoyed doing that.
Do you have a tag? You have a specific tag for
Easel.
you? For you? Okay.
it's called Easel.
Could you still do it today? Could
Oh
you?
yeah,
Okay.
I absolutely could.
Yeah. All right. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
It's funny. Every now and again, I have to use spray paint in my work because I got to do something, and it's it smells so good. I mean, nobody probably thinks spray paint smells so good, but
had
it
to
takes me
be.
back.
There's
Smells
probably-
really take you back to a certain time of life. Every now and
Yeah.
again, you'll smell
Oh,
something.
yeah.
It'll take you back to when you were 12 and go, "Oh, do you remember when Grandma made those cookies?" And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It'll just take you back instantly, or to when you were a great time, or alternatively a bad time. So
Yeah.
yeah, spray paint really takes me back to a good time.
Yeah, I think
not
that-
that I was doing too much sniffing of spray paint.
Right.
But
Well,
I'm just thinking,
no.
every time I
Yeah, a little
I
bit
smell
of
rubber
now.
cement, I'm like,
Yeah.
woo! You know? No, just me. See Doug Huffman paint. I'm like, no, so that had to be pretty exciting though, because it's kind of, I mean,
illegal.
it was illegal, and
It's kind
y'all
of
like had to
illegal.
sneak out at night and
Oh, yeah.
plan, and that had to be super exciting.
Oh yeah, there's It's curious that I would then go later in my life to become a police
police
officer.
Well, that's why I was like, I had to point to
sometimes
that.
say there's a fine line between a cop and a criminal.
Right.
And
right.
I think maybe there was some nature in me that could have gone either way.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I went the right way. But I think it's also, if you use a lot of common sense, you are in a much better position to know who to look for when you are a cop, because you understand some of what's going on.
Yeah.
And you're just much better at chasing bad guys because you can sort of understand where they are and what they're doing, what they're thinking.
Yeah. So you just got away from set building and was like, I think I'm gonna try and be a cop.
We had
over
moved
here.
to Florida,
Okay.
because there was no work here, like I said, and we wanted something positive when we decided to get married. We had the kids. We wanted to move somewhere where we could both have productive careers and have a chance at really having a good home life, rather than just scraping by. So we moved to Florida, where the economy was booming. And that's where I then got into that. But then about 6 years later, Corinne said to me, I want to move back. We just built technically our dream home at the time, and it was, this is fantastic. Shortly followed by, I want to move home.
Yeah.
But okay, you want to move home, fine. You moved here for me, I'll move back for you, not a problem. It's give and take in life. That's how it should be. So when we moved back, I said, if we are going to move back, then I'm going to change careers. Really, what do you want to do? I'm going to be a cop.
Wow.
So she said, okay. So we moved home, and 6 months later, after moving home, I was a cop.
And you had 20 years.
22 years.
22 years.
Yep.
So,
I don't want to blow past a
Go ahead.
detail.
Yeah. What detail?
So I was 4 when y'all got married?
Uh-huh.
Or-
It must be about you.
No, it's not about
No,
me.
I'm just kidding.
It's about, how old were you?
I was 22.
22.
Wow.
4 kids.
Wow.
So this man married my mom, who is
A little bit older.
a little bit older. I'll be respectful and not say a specific age, but with 4 kids.
Yeah.
Like, that's wild.
No, I mean, and I hear
that's wild.
I hear from people who, friends or whatever that are stepdads, how one child, it can be difficult, to be a stepdad. And you came in with 4 kids, and what was really a lot, rather than stepdad, was dad,
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's very difficult about that. I never like the term stepdad, and
Yeah.
it's interesting. I understand why I feel that way, but seeing other relationships with people and their the blended families and the complexities that sometimes brings, and how they refer to the other parent or the married in, like, I understand why some people refer to their step parent as a step parent, but for me, like, it's always been the only reason why I will ever use that is to avoid confusion.
Yeah.
Because bio dad and Doug, sorry about that. You'd think I'd be used to. Is that a new lamp?
No.
No, it's just me. But there couldn't be any more different of people.
Yeah.
And so to avoid confusion, like I
Right.
would say that, but
Right.
yeah, it's never been that. That's never been the environment. I
Right.
would say, from my perspective, certainly.
Well, and it's I've heard a lot from there. There are a lot of unsung heroes and stepfathers, particularly because of how there's a whole lot of you don't get the credit of the bio dad, you know what I mean, but you have the
Do
responsibility.
you know what it looks like to me?
Yeah.
I view. I don't think I've ever made this connection with to you actually, but in the same way that I imagine Jesus felt about Joseph,
Right. Right.
raised him,
Right.
did all the dad stuff,
Right.
dad,
Right.
but
But
there's this,
Right.
and not to diminish the Heavenly Father or
No,
anything,
100%.
and make that connection, but there's that complexity of, like, okay, I get that, but this is, I mean, that's my dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my dad.
yeah, 100%. And I think about God Himself with us, that we are adopted children
Yeah,
into His
absolutely.
His kingdom. So, that is that was
I just didn't want to blow past that before we got into, just the fact that this family came together is by
Yeah.
itself miraculous and, a blessing.
It was the smartest thing. We talk about it all the time. Corinne and I, your mum and I, we talk about it all the time. It's the smartest thing we ever did was get married. And I look back on it now and I think, from the outside, looking at a generic situation, somebody getting married to somebody older than them and they've got 4 kids and they're 22 years old. Yeah, my first thing, as it was with our parents, is, alarm bells are going off, the red
Yeah.
light is flashing, and people can see a disaster ahead.
Including the
They're not
Methodist
worried.
pastor.
Yeah, there you go. They're not worried about her.
what did I want to know what the Methodist pastor said. Can
Didn't
we
y'all
say
fail
that?
your
Can we-
Yes.
he begged
Well,
y'all?
We'll get to that in just
Yeah,
a second.
yeah,
Our parents weren't worried about her. They weren't worried about me, but they were worried about you 4.
Huh.
Because the 4 children, we were growing up. Look, if you make a mess of it, you can fix it. You're
Right.
grown-ups. You
Right.
get on with life.
Yeah, you're
But there are
adults.
4 little people that could be really hurt in many ways.
Yeah.
It worked out for the best. So
And
it's
during
worked out
that
great.
season, my mom had just come out of pretty, troubled predicaments.
Yeah.
And so, that was a crazy. I mean, if you really look back on that and consider it all together and just stand from the outside and look at, there was like no way this was going to work. But it
Yeah,
was like,
it was a recipe for disaster.
Yeah,
But it worked
but-
out perfectly.
man.
But yes, and going back to
Yeah.
we got married in the Methodist church,
Yep.
and part of it, because we didn't go to church at the time,
Right.
and not until much later. But he said we had to go through a formal process, go through a testing. It gave you one of those like 150 questions, and we both had to take it. And his first thing that he said in our very first time together, because we had to go counseling sessions with him, was after he looked at the test results for her and the test results for me, is, "Are you sure you want to get married?" I mean, you guys are as alike as chalk and cheese, as we would say in England. So again, there was somebody else saying there's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And we said no, because in our hearts we knew it was right. We knew we loved each other. I knew I loved the kids.
Yeah.
We knew we wanted a life together, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
If you know everything's right, you go for it.
Yeah. And I think a big part of that too is not that you just loved her, but you also loved the family already. You love the kids.
We all got wedding rings.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he got us all wedding rings.
Wow.
I think maybe one or two of them still exist.
Yeah, mine still does.
Okay.
Mine
You're
still it fits on my pinky, like the top knuckle.
You still have it though? I would have lost.
I have it. You have it. My mom has it. Yeah.
If I had been in possession of that at any point, like I would have lost that a million times over.
I probably
wouldn't
would have
want
sold.
it to.
I would have sold it
wouldn't
for
have wanted
drugs at
to.
one point. So I'm glad I didn't have it.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I think that's a good point just for in general when it comes to we always are counseling people before they're getting married and all this sort of stuff, and there are many times we'll be like, "Are you sure you want to get married?" There's sometimes where I'll be like, "Look, this is a recipe for disaster according to the scripture. I just want you to realize that according to the scripture, there's a recipe for disaster." But no matter what, whoever the pastor is, no matter what, you don't determine the future. And
I wish I know who it was, because I don't know who it was. But the person's probably still. If they're not, was the old man at that time?
The pastor at the church?
Yeah.
No, he was actually.
I bet you he's still around. It's probably Van
I would
Stinson.
say he's probably about y'all's age.
Hey,
At the
Van, if you're
time,
listening.
he was probably about their age now.
Yeah. So
he
he's
was,
still
he was probably about 40s.
Oh,
he's
he's still.
he's still around.
He's
So
still
He may
I
not
don't
be in
know.
the ministry anymore.
Look into it.
You never know.
like beard.
We'll invite him. We'll invite him and not tell him.
Exactly.
And
We'll
then
be
we'll
like,
invite y'all.
so you want to tell us why? No. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I tend to take us off track.
No. So you move back to Louisiana, and then you start in the police force.
It's a calling. It's something you want to do.
Yeah.
That's why. I always wanted to.
Yeah.
I just had that. I love to help people. I love to do something for people.
Yeah.
So loved it.
Would you agree that, and I don't want to reduce it down to something binary, but let's just, for conversation's sake, that there are those who are, they're there because they want to help people and, be there in the difficult situations, be the quiet in the storm. And then there are those who are like, I want to throw my weight around.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how do you, because I know you were part of, I don't want to
Obviously-
jump too far ahead of your career, but I know you were at a point where you were a big part of the hiring process for people. And
For
you
years.
kind of had to be a stopgap for that.
I hired and unfortunately was part of firing and even once or twice arresting some of our own officers. For decades, I did that.
I think that's a very important job, personally.
Yeah.
It is.
Filtering out people who are in that position.
You usually do a pretty good job, but there are some that get through and absolutely they blow you away.
Yeah.
And I
It's gotta be
can
real
name names,
disappointing.
which obviously I wouldn't do now, but
Right.
and I wouldn't even go into details. But
Right.
there are some people you do an awful lot of homework, and you try and hire the people that you think are going to be great. And usually you're right, and they are great in varying degrees, and they're fantastic. They do a great job. But there are the odd one that slip through. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it always, like that's a perfect example. Like for us in ministry, it's something that we take extremely seriously for people who would be put into a position of power, even, being joined
Which
in
is why the
staff.
clergy never do anything wrong.
Never. There's
Ever.
because we take it so seriously, nobody ever falls.
Nobody gets through it.
Flawless.
We got a great record. Everybody knows the history of the record of the church when it comes to, but I think it's any position of power. It's any position of,
It's any position of anything. There's good and bad everywhere you go. It doesn't matter.
yeah. And you'll do the best you can, but you're going to have people who will falter, or they were the wolf in sheep's clothing all along, which sometimes happens, and so
Well, I
it's
think
hard
it's a misread of what authority is.
Yeah.
You know, I think to have authority over people, well, I don't know, to serve, you know, I mean, I've always said management, leadership, it's a servant's position.
Right.
It really, but I think you've got a lot of people out there who don't see it that way, who are like, I want to be the leader because I don't want anybody telling me what to do. I want to tell other people what to do.
That's one of the hardest things you have with a young officer getting into the force, is most officers get in and they want to be 10 feet tall and bulletproof and go and fix the world and right all wrongs, and you can't do that.
Yeah.
And you've got to sort of hold some people back, and when they want to, you know, you see a fight and two people are into it and you're brought in there as a police officer, right, you're going to jail and you got this and that, and it's like, whoa, let's just, this isn't that big a deal. Let's just send people home, give somebody a stern finger wagging and a bit of a strong talk to them and tell them don't do it again. Oh no, they got to go to jail. No, not everybody has to go to jail. And pulling an officer back from that gung-ho and the start of the career is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
Because essentially what they say by the letter of the law probably is correct, probably is right. But then you get to learn through experience and just through common sense that there are times when you should and times when you shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's...
And y'all, I mean, I know that one of the best traits of police officers in general is just de-escalation. Like being able to de-escalate a situation.
You become very, very good at it very, very quickly. The very first time I went to a fight was at the St. Tammany Parish Fair. And there was just a whole melee of people, fists and weaves and shirts, and there was language and there was blood. There was this, and we went running over. They went running over there with two other police officers, Steve Short and Beverly Bayham. Both excellent officers, and they're now both retired, like myself. And we got there, and my very first reaction was, I didn't know what to do. Yeah. I was probably going to make things a lot worse.
Right, right.
Bing, bang, boom. Just like that, it was done. They knew exactly what to do. And I learned instantly what to do.
Yeah.
And then it became something. You go in, you separate.
Yeah.
You're not looking for immediately for who you're de-escalating. You're separating parties. You go in with a big booming voice, or you go in with authority because you've got the badge and the uniform, and you go in and you just kind of take control of the situation. You've got to de-escalate. And like you say, separate, and then as things calm down more and more and more, then you can start dealing with, okay, do I need to take action here? And you try and figure out who did what and why, and do we need medical assistance, and go through the whole thing. But you become very, very good at that in a very, very short period of time. I'll get to an accident now, and I will know exactly what to do. A lot of times you get to a car accident, and people will be wandering around
Standing
like,
around.
what do I do? What do I do? They don't know.
Right.
You know, there's a TV series, you're probably too young to remember this, called Lost in Space, where a robot would constantly say, you know, don't panic, and its arms would go up and down like crazy, saying don't panic as it panicked. And a lot of people are like that because they don't know what to do. But I can get to a car accident with multiple wrecks and multiple vehicles and people hurt and trapped in vehicles. I'll know what to do instantly because I've done it so many times. Same with a fight. Same with a very tense situation because you've done it so many times.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a very valuable learned skill. And what a lot of people don't understand is that, it doesn't take much to be a cop. Yes, it does.
Oh, it takes...
It's a very, very highly skilled job if you're going to do it well. And if you want really good cops, you've got to have people that have the experience and they've got the training and the surroundings in order to make that happen. It takes a long time.
And not to turn the podcast into just about law enforcement, but I do have a question.
Yeah.
What do you think how do I want to word that? I can't imagine how somebody goes through. I don't see this in you, and so this is what I'm asking you. I don't see how people can go through a full career of being a police officer, seeing all the things that you see. You know, lots of death, lots of violence, lots of disappointing, misanthropic type things where you're just like. For
those who are wondering, misanthropic, just what do you think that means?
That's that private education. There. It's like, I love how you. What does that word mean to you?
What does it
like
mean?
Giving up on mankind, like just be not, being completely dissatisfied with humanity, rejecting humanity, like misanthrope. You're a misanthrope.
Okay.
Like people are terrible.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you can avoid PTSD type things. Like police officers in general. Like and so is there? I mean, is that something that police departments are concerned about and address? Like, I mean, it's mental health, I guess, is what I'm really saying. How does that work?
Historically, not as much as they should have been.
Okay.
Over the time now, we're a lot better at it than we used to be. I never had a problem with it. I saw some pretty nasty things. It never really affected me. I didn't have any PTSD. I was very fortunate in so much as I could go to work and see all kinds of things. As soon as I left work and got home, I could switch it off and turn it off completely. And I very, very rarely did I ever have to the point where I would lose sleep or be really concerned about a case. I had a few of those cases, not many, but they never really stayed with me. I was able to say, that's not me. I've done everything I can. So I knew I could mentally turn off and separate myself from the two. But yeah, there are some people that have a hard time from it. We had, for example, we had officers that had been in Desert Storm or something like that, and then they came back and they became an officer, and we had one officer that was going down the road. Fantastic guy, super guy. I was so happy we got him as an officer. He was just top-notch guy. He went to work for the DA's office later. But as he was going down the road, he hit a pothole. He was back in Iraq.
Wow. Just
that quickly. So he was there, and at that point in time, he was thinking about going for his gun, and anybody that would come for him, it could have been a firefight, because he was back in Iraq at the point in time where he was needing to defend himself and his officers. So he realized, I can't do this job.
Wow.
Yeah.
We sent him, got to give credit to phenomenal Chief Tim Lentz, who used his own money to send this guy to get top-notch PTSD mental help. Just super guy, Tim Lentz, fantastic. We miss him. We need more of him in the world, in policing. But he sent the guy, and the guy came back and still said, "Look, it didn't work. I've just got to get out. I can't do it. I cannot be in that position." So some officers.
And was that after like going through academy and all of that stuff?
Oh yeah, he was a road officer. He was out there doing it.
Wow.
But he thought he was able to manage it, but he couldn't. But fortunately he recognized. He didn't try and hide it.
Right.
He accepted it, embraced it, and said, "I got to do something different."
Right.
Good for him.
Right.
And we did everything we could for him.
Yeah.
So the facilities and the ability to help officers now is a lot better than it was. Will it still need improvement? The whole world needs improvement. Sure. Of course it does. We all need improvement, and we all need to get better and make sure it happens in future. But some people will be able to take it a lot more than others can. And I've seen some people that need to get out of the business because it's too much on them.
Yeah.
Everybody's different.
I think that brings to the part of the story I'd like to also hear about, which is I know that your backstory with faith has been kind of ebbs and flows, right? As far as tell me a little bit about what your relationship with God has been like throughout all of this.
I keep it very quiet and very very private. Next subject. I'm not an outward leader or something. Obviously, my son John is the leader of the church. He's the pastor of the church.
Right.
I want to help any way I can. So a couple of Sundays ago, I was out doing the hayride. I try and pick up tables and chairs and help around and do little tasks I can and help. I'll never want to be anybody at the church that leads at the church, because I don't want to be seen as like, John's bringing his whole family in here and they're going to take over. Yeah. So I just want to be, I don't ever want to be a leader, and I want to be kind of quiet, and that's just me about that.
Yeah.
That's just the way I am about that.
I
want to be very quiet and private about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I barely even speak to Corinne, my wife, about it.
Really?
I'm very, very private.
Yeah.
I have a very firm belief, a very solid belief, very loving belief. In awe. Excuse me, sorry. Do you watch, I know you do, The Chosen?
Yeah.
That is the most brilliant TV show I've ever seen.
It is brilliant.
When I see the portrayal of Jesus in that is just fantastic. That does so much for me.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that so much. Also, the Stooges, he calls them.
Oh, yeah.
The 12 that are following him. They call them Stooges
I can relate
in
to
the
those.
most loving way possible.
Those are the ones.
Yeah.
Yep.
And sorry, I got to break my mood here a little bit. But no, I have a very much a serve. my form of leadership when I was at the police department, I tried to be what's called a servant leader. I didn't want to be the one that gets up. That was the chief. I was number 2. I was happy for him to get up and go kiss babies and be the speech guy who would tell everybody, you must do that. I want to be the number 2 guy. I always wanted to be the number. He could never figure out, surely you want to be number 1? No, I want to be the number 2 guy.
Yeah.
Because I want to be in the one that's in the background making things open and making things work for you. I worked in the police department where we were never, we would send us on the streets with guns and shotguns and bullets, but they would lock up the supplies in the closet and not give us the key because they didn't trust us with them. It's like, really? So one of the first things I did when I became the police chief, deputy chief, is I took the lock off that door and said, we trust you guys.
Yeah.
It was a signal I tried to tell to them, and I tell them over and over, guys, I trust you with rolls of toilet paper.
Yeah, right.
I certainly trust you with people's lives on the street that you're going to do the best thing for them.
Right.
And I want to provide you with the best equipment. I want to provide you with the best training, the best everything possible that you can go out there and help the public and do the best job that you can. So I always wanted to be the one that provided. And when it comes to worship, I just want to kind of be quiet in the background.
Yeah.
I don't want to be loud, noisy. I'm not going to be the one that if everybody's listening to something, they really get moved. I'm not going to be the one that jumps up and says, praise the Lord. That's not me.
Right.
I might be thinking that inside, but you're never going to hear me say it.
Right. Right. Where do you think? I'm curious because, like, where
is that the stiff upper lip, the British thing? You think, or is that just you?
Yes, very possibly.
Yeah,
very possibly. We just had an election, and we very, very well haven't even touched on it. But we just had an election where Donald Trump was elected, and I can tell you, most of the people I know, in fact, just about everybody I know back in England, absolutely detests him. But the reason they detest him, I think, mostly is because of some of his qualities, which are very what you would call anti-British. He's very bombastic. He's braggadocious.
Yeah.
He's quite loud.
Yes.
He's got an ego that's about as big as this universe.
Right.
He's very anti-British. It's against everything that would be considered proper from England. So I think he's just the opposite of what everybody likes.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of there's a Dwight Moody who came over to
D.L. Moody.
Yeah, Dwight. Yeah, but his name's Dwight.
I know. I've just never heard anybody.
It's that private education.
It's just you just know him. Y'all go way back.
I mean, we go way back. Me and Dwight. 1800s, late 1800s, like a Billy Graham of his day. And he went over to England and felt like God had called him to England to begin to preach there and was an evangelist there. And he said at first, like while he was preaching to them, he was very evangelistic. He was very impassioned. He was all this sort of stuff. And he said it was like facing a judgment. Like everybody was just, they were like, who is this? He's loud. Yeah. He's obnoxious.
Where are your manners?
That's the stereotypical view of Americans. Very loud, very obnoxious.
Right.
Yeah.
But once you live over here, coming from England to this country, what you don't understand in England is, yes, there is some of that's true.
Yes.
But a lot of that is confidence.
Yeah.
And determination.
Yeah.
And not being shy.
Right.
We are going to, and I think to a large extent the country sort of lost some of that recently.
100%.
I'm hoping we get some of it back. No matter who won the election, I hope we were going to get some of it back.
Right.
But he is the opposite, but we need direction. We need class and quality. And I think now, I think hopefully we'll have it.
Well, and I will say this, like, for all of Donald Trump's faults, there is a thing that he has that has helped me as a person who is a people pleaser. That his ability, one of the things he once said, and I've never forgotten what he said, was
you're fired.
Somebody said you have all this that's constantly being said about you and all this kind of stuff, and constantly being berated and all that sort of stuff. He said, with that being the case, how do you deal with it? And he says, I don't care about what people think about me. He says, when you care about what people think about you, you choke. And like when he said that, I was like, I'm a terrible choker in golf. So, but a lot of my joking in golf comes because suddenly somebody's behind me, watching me, somebody's around me. Suddenly I'm caring about what people think. It just so happens Donald Trump is a great golf player, and I think that there's a reason
That's
for
probably
that. And it's because he does not care about what people think, and that's a strength that I think that for all the faults is definitely a good thing that would be in people, that rather than care about what people think.
If you can take this to heart and really go with it, and if everybody could, they would be so much better off. What people think of you is none of your business.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And as soon as you can accept that,
right,
and say, "Look, I can't get inside their head,
and I can't control their perception of me.
Do what's right, and try and be productive and positive, and then hopefully they'll see. If not, I can't control that.
And it is one of the most freeing things, and the Lord's worked a lot on me on that from the time of when I began, because I'm like I was a lot like that, like what you're describing, as far as like I would never even want to talk to people about my faith or anything like that. And out of all the things that God called me to do, to be a preacher was not in the long list of what I wanted to do for him. And getting up there and saying things that I believe he asked me to say, or that I should speak out, and knowing that it will insult people, or there will be people who will be sensitive to it. There will be people who will not like what I might say, or they may like it. Either way, like whether it's positive or negative, and learning to realize that none of that actually matters. Mm-hmm. That all that really matters is the fact of, am I going to be faithful to the thing that he's asked me to do? And if I will, I can leave the results in his hands. I don't have, in fact, when there's bad results, there was bad results for Jesus. You know, like he went to a lot of people wanted to either make him a king or put him to death, you know? Right. So you're going to see the fickleness of people. But you know, what's funny is D.L. Moody had one of the greatest evangelistic movements in Europe. And it was because there was a English man.
Is it Wilberforce?
It's F.B. Meyer.
Oh.
F.B. Meyer was in the audience of him, and he was doing his normal thing. And they also, not only was he bombastic and loud, he was uneducated. And like, if you watched what he would write, it would be misspelled and all this sort of stuff, you know. And so
that's just not proper.
Exactly. And so they were giving. There was kind of this. The whole crowd was kind of turning against D.L. Moody, and F.B. Meyer stood up, and he said he may not have and I'm going to butcher it, but he said something like to the effect of, he may not be polished, he may not have what we would consider being proper. He says, but what that man is telling us right now is things that we need to hear. And from him, he opened the door for D.L. Moody to have one of the most successful movements of God in England, because of somebody willing to say, see it in him, and then kind of do that. So I always remember that story. Always remember that story. So you're much, and so that's probably a little bit of where that comes from, that kind of stiff upper lip, that English properness.
Yeah, my father was American, my mother was English, so I'm a half and half.
Okay.
So I got an American passport. I was technically born American.
Okay.
Because my dad was American. But yes, I was raised in England until the age of 21, except for 3 years when I lived over here as a little boy. So really I was formed in an English mold.
Yeah, yeah.
But ever since then, I've been over here. So the vast majority of my life has been right here in St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana.
Yeah.
But yes, I've got a lot of that English. I consider myself both.
Yeah.
But I'm probably a little bit more English than American.
Yeah.
But there are times I consider myself more American than English.
Yeah.
So it really chops and changes depending upon what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, that stiff upper lip, that bit more reserved, proper way of doing things. Must use your knife and fork when you're eating. Yeah. Please.
To this day, I get anxiety if I don't have a knife.
Yeah. They would be having friends over, and the friends would be at the dining room table, and we'd put a knife and fork in front of them, and you see them whispering, "Don't use your thumb.
Don't use your thumb."
And they'd look at the knife like, "Use the knife." knife, and they sort of have to show them how to use the knife a little bit.
Yes.
Because I was very, very strict on table manners.
Yes.
I had been taught myself
Yeah.
to be very, very strict on table manners.
Yes.
So I was very, very prim and proper about
Yeah.
that. There are
Yeah.
some
Yep.
things you've got to be proper about.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad was,
and
the
that
same
doesn't
way.
go away. You know,
No.
I mean, I'm like, that stuff is a big deal to me now.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My dad would always. He would do this at the table. He would go. He'd nod his head like this, and that was his signal to us. You know the proper thing to do in this instance, of which you are not doing, and you will need to change this.
Yeah.
And but sometimes he would go like this, and I'd be like, Dad, I really don't know what I'm doing, you know. And he's like, oh yes, you know. And then it would just, he was a very big in table manners, no elbows on the table, you know, just always the right things. But when I went to a party with a friend, you know, it was at a very nice restaurant, and his parents were like, Josh has really good manners, and you know, and I was like, well, I learned that from my dad.
Yeah.
Drilling it into me.
Yeah, one of the things I tell people when they question my behaviors, because I do have, this might come as a shock to you,
strange behaviors,
but I might have some strange behaviors or tendencies, and I'll have people question that, and I say I can't help it. I was raised British. I don't know. I was just raised British. I don't know. I mean, I never, you know, I wasn't raised there, but may as well in my house. You know,
it is such a strange thing. The difference of kind of where we're seen as bombastic, and the fact that the English are seen much more reserved, and it's like, you know, there's a large portion of our population that came from England. You know what I mean? So, but it's like,
If you had to equate America with one other country the most, it's going to be England.
right.
And then you can argue whether it's going to be Italy, or whether it's going to be the continent of Africa, or
Right.
whether it's going to be Ireland, or whether so on and so on and so on.
Right.
But the one country I think you would say most of all
Yeah.
is going to be England.
Right. Because there was a war fought. If
There
I
was.
remember. You know?
There was.
And
Yeah,
there
I
were-
think
there
I read
were some
about that.
pilgrims involved at some point in time.
At some point.
So I think, I think it's because of the caricatures we see of each other.
Yeah.
You know, because there's certainly bombastic, obnoxious British people out there.
Yeah.
None that are listening to this program.
Of course not.
But of course there are. I mean, of course they are. You know, but those aren't usually the ones that are highlighted. You know, it's not the caricature when somebody pictures somebody from England.
Right.
There are a lot of really introverted, quiet people in the United States who keep their head down and just work hard, and probably have more British etiquette than
And when
some
they
British
go into
people
Europe,
have.
they say they're not from the U.S. They say they're from
Yeah,
Canada.
We're from Canada. Yeah. What's that about? But right? You know? But I think it's because of the caricatures that we see of each other. Because
Yeah.
I don't know. I know some obnoxious British people.
Yeah. Yeah. You
No names.
None of
no,
them.
I'm kidding.
Nobody can hear what he just did, but he
No.
was moving his head.
Yeah, well,
towards
if you're not
Doug.
watching this show, you're missing the moneymaker.
Yeah, that's it. And
Of course, this is a nonprofit show, so
exactly, you get what you pay for.
I was going to say,
worth every penny.
The faces
Worth
are free.
every penny.
The faces are free.
Sorry.
So, what else?
Well, so I know you don't. It's actually why I was always hesitant to see if you would come on, because I do know that you're quiet about your faith. But what would you be willing to talk about in terms of how you came to the strength of the faith you have? Or are there, you know, like, how'd you get where you are now?
foundation came from grandmother. Her faith was the strongest faith I think I've ever known. I mean, I saw her openly pray, just quietly to herself. I can't tell you how many times every day. And she was just the most faithful person I've ever known. So I saw such a huge faith there. My mother had some faith at times, and we would go to church, and then she would sort of maybe not lose her faith, but we'd lose going to church, which I thought was great.
Right.
I was never a very willing churchgoer, but I had to go when I was young sometimes, not very often. But I saw it from my grandmother, and I just think, again, it's part of you.
Yeah.
It's something maybe, you can learn if you understand, and you get an understanding of it, but like being in the police force, being a police officer, or being a teacher, or being a nurse, or being a pastor. That's a calling.
Yeah.
And just if you understand what's going on and you just look around you, it just overwhelms you, and you can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't take a course in it.
No, right.
It's just something I hate to say pick up, but maybe you do pick up, and that's the way it is for me, and you just see it that way.
I mean, as any relationship, the longer you're in it, I think the closer you end up getting, for sure. And that's the point I've made several times, and somebody made it to me. There are the majority of people out there that follow Christ never go to seminary. They probably don't even go to a Bible study. But they love Jesus, and they've given themselves to him, and they don't have any greater or more salvation than the person who does. And then there are plenty of people who go to seminary that Jesus might not know.
Yeah.
And
I think about with John Wesley. John Wesley talked about Christian perfection often, but one of the things that
what is that like for you, Josh? Now that you've acquired it,
it's difficult.
Yeah,
put you on a pedestal, but I'm working on it. No,
that's
but
right,
it was something that he always talked about. He believed that God could truly make us perfect in love. That's how,
right.
The perfection wasn't not making mistakes or doing all this kind of. The perfection was being made perfect in love.
How to love like Jesus.
How to love like Jesus. How to love like God. And people would ask him, it was a very powerful teaching, but they would ask him, they would say, do you feel like you've gotten there? And he's like, no. He's like, no. But he says, but I think I have met some. And one of them was an older church lady who he just felt like had all the signs of just a Christian perfection in love. It sounds a lot like your grandmother. And so it's
and John Wesley was British, and
he was British.
Maybe
he was British.
Actually,
he
Bible,
wrote the letter to the U.S. that said, "I don't know why God and his has allowed to see fit for y'all to win this war, but I will accept the results."
The Wesley had a Bible study. Am I making this up? I'm not making this up. There was a place actually in High Wycombe. There was I remember coming across it when I was studying. It was something for school, and I remember like seeing where the location was. And there's something historical about John Wesley. I think it was a Sunday school program. It started real small and then grew and grew and grew. But the location is in High Wycombe.
The Foundry?
It might be.
I think it might have been what that was called.
It might be. That might be it.
Yeah.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Well, I mean, he wasn't there when you were there.
No.
But I think the building since it's all repurposed. I don't even know if the building's still there. But I do know that happened. I read that in a book somewhere.
Yeah.
For school.
Right.
The most notable thing I remember about High Wycombe for any kind of worship is just the opposite. It was for devil worship in the Hellfire Caves.
You're right. I knew that.
West Wycombe. Benjamin Franklin actually visited there once. The Dashwood family.
I've been there.
Yes, you've been there.
Yeah,
when
I've
we
been
took
there.
you over.
Yeah, I
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was.
That explains so much.
I was waiting for it. I just looked over, and I was just timing you.
You got to let it, sit for a second
gotta rest
before
it's ready to cut.
Yeah, to bring out.
Well.
Deep subject for such a show.
Well. That's a deep subject. Do you have any more questions?
What is the meaning?
Yeah, exactly. No, the square root.
Could you tell me how to solve Pythagoras' theorem? No. You've done a lot. Like, as far as it seems like you have followed your passion often in the sense of like, well, carpentry may not have even started out as a question of a passion, like you said, but instead was more like, let's do something with your hands.
Here, son, you're going to go and do this.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. And then you became a police officer because of your desire and your calling to do that, to help and to serve people. It's very different from each other. Like the two, one is a very people oriented sort of thing. One is obviously private but there's there is a connection, I think, and this is something we see as pastors often too, is that in the situation where you find yourself as a police officer, you are attempting as best as you can to bring order out of chaos, and to work in order to do that. And from what you've talked about, like, there's a little bit more connection, in that you were gifted in that way too.
That's pretty smart, Josh.
Well, I mean, it takes a second.
You came up with that?
Yeah, and then I was losing all the behind,
Wow.
so, like, I mean,
No, that's good.
I roll with it until
That's
it
true.
breaks, okay?
That's
I go with it until it breaks. But I see, and did you think that there was that, did you feel like ever there was that connection between the two, or thinking that there might have been a skill set that involved both your love of the artistry of wood, but also
Never tied the two of them together.
Yeah.
Always totally different. Although what you say there makes sense, it never occurred to me that way.
Yeah, it would make sense for why you would also be a great de-escalator eventually. Like, even though, like, when you said you started, didn't know, but because you would be a person who could see how to bring something out of
I think that is incredibly accurate. I really do. And just having, I'm knowing you, like, that's what it is. It's the bringing order into chaos.
Mm-hmm.
That's your resting pulse. That's what you do best. That's what you did for the family. I mean,
I'm put here to do for others. I think to a large extent maybe we all are.
we are.
I would hope. I think
I have a very strong faith that I'm put here for you and for the other three, and then for y'all's children. And that's
Mom enters in there somewhere, right?
She does. She does.
Yeah, he just considers her so much a part of himself.
That's right.
That he
Yeah,
never
the two are one.
Right.
Speaking
Two or
entirely
one.
selfishly.
Exactly.
No, I have a very strong feeling that there are great things going to come from y'all, from the kids, and my job is to facilitate that.
Greater love has no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends.
Well, I don't want to lay my life down anytime soon. But,
Well,
you
you're
already
doing
did.
it. You're doing
You
it.
already
'cause
did.
No,
You made your
it's
life a
not
living
just the
sacrifice.
blaze. It's not just the blaze of glory. It is the living sacrifice. It is the day by day where we choose
But
to.
I know we're running short on time.
Yeah.
But just to speak about that very quickly, there's a lot of sacrifice. You did make your life a living sacrifice in many ways for others. Can you talk about just briefly, if there's anything to it, how that has helped you? Because I think we look at people who are
sacrificial.
Oh,
totally
you got
got
it?
you.
Okay.
Totally got you.
Okay.
When I first came over here at the age of 21 in 1986, I'm just turned 60 this year, I sort of didn't know which way I was going to go, what I was going to do. I had no clue. It's kind of like when I got out of high school. I didn't know what I was going to do.
Right.
It sounded like a good idea at the time. I was going to come over here, drive around, have a good time, go back to England. The people I was working for, they said, you can come back, your job's waiting for you anytime. But I came over here, and I really didn't know what to do, and met this beautiful lady, and she had 4 beautiful kids, and we got married. I needed her. Mm. You know what? She needed me. Mm. Y'all needed me, y'all needed her, y'all needed us. We needed you.
Yes.
I needed constructive, positive things in my life to hold together, which she brought with incredible wisdom. She didn't realize she had it at the time, but she did. She really held me together. Mm. And I think in many ways I look back on it that, I held her together. We held each other together. We became a family unit. Mm. It was what I needed. It served me, it served you, it served each other. I think if we hadn't been married and y'all have stayed here, I think there's a good chance you may have fallen in with some of the wrong people. When we all moved to Florida, we had to move into, and we had to come together as a family. We had to make it work or it was going to fall apart. Mm. And it worked brilliantly. Mm-hmm. And not because I'm brilliant, or because we worked together.
Yeah.
Even you as kids worked to make it happen, because you as kids wanted to make it happen. Mm. You wanted to have a family. You wanted to have all those wonderful things. And I think every family, everybody wants that. They want that unity. They need that belonging, that sense of love.
Yeah.
So it worked for me, us coming together. It worked for us coming together. So it was perfectly symbiotic for us all to work together like that. So
Yeah.
if that kind of answers your question.
Yeah. I, when the Lord calls us to sacrifice and to give of ourselves, it's easy to look at that and think that it's like,
Oh, yeah.
well,
I don't want to do that.
so my life's going to be
It's
crap.
gone. It's gone.
It's all for you. And look, maybe that is the call sometimes for some people. Maybe you're called to be martyred. I don't know. But most people aren't called to be martyred.
Yeah.
And sacrificing your life doesn't always lead to problems. In fact, it can enrich your life. It can be the thing that, like saying yes, to the hard thing can be the thing that makes your life. The obstacle can become the way.
And when you're a police officer, one of the things that's very valuable for you to do as you're driving around at 3 o'clock in the morning and watching possums, raccoons, cats, and nothing else it's totally dead. One of the things you have to do is you have to practice to yourself and think to yourself, what would I do in this situation? Because if you're ever in that situation, you don't want to do like I was when I got out of high school.
Right.
You want to have so you've got to rehearse these things mentally, and you've got to practice. And now I completely forgot where I was going with this. But anyway.
Well,
I got off track.
I think one of the martyrdom thing is there was a martyr named.
That was it. Sorry, let me interrupt you, Josh. I'm sorry.
Go.
But part of that is I always said to myself that I knew being a police officer I might have to be in that position.
Yeah.
Where I've got to step in front.
Right.
You become a police officer, you've got to step in front of a bullet if you have to, so to speak. Sometimes maybe even literally to save people. As a family, I've said to myself numerous times, if I have to, it's me.
Yeah.
It's not you.
Right.
It's going to be me.
Right.
But
right.
that's what you have to say. But that's also...
And honestly, you also said it, not that we're doing it every day or that it's through the thinking through it every day, but you did that every day when you put the needs of those who you love, you put them before your own needs.
And the biggest example of that is
Jesus.
Yeah.
It really is. And
do you see why I relate with him?
100%. Yeah. I think that's what I was going to say was Polycarp was a martyr, and they were going to put him to death. He was an older man, and the Romans...
And had to go on living with the name Polycarp.
Well, for a long time.
Goodness.
And he was so respected. He was so respected by the Christians that he had forgotten how to tie his shoes because they would vie with each other for the opportunity to honor this man in order to tie his shoes. So they came and to arrest him and take him, and he was fumbling with his shoelaces to try and get it, but they brought him, and the Romans really respected age, and so they would say to him, look, all you have to do is just burn a little bit of incense to the emperor. That's all you have to do. And the thing he said and he says, then they'd say, just deny Christ. And he would say, these 80 something years, I don't remember how old he was, 83, these 83 years, Christ has never done me any wrong. Why would I do him wrong now? And for a man who's lived that long and is going to give his life as martyrdom, to show that he was willing to sacrifice his whole life to his faith, his belief, his trust, his putting into practice what Jesus did for us, to sacrifice his life for others in love. But what at the end of his life he says about Jesus is he says he's never done me any wrong. Because there's no wrong in putting others before us. In fact, it is the greatest foundation or source of meaning and purpose in life that you could ever find. And the other way just offers emptiness.
Yeah.
And so you find out at the end when you've put those others before you that you really were even putting yourself first in some sense, because you were getting so much more than you would have if you had done it the other way.
Everyone that I have ever seen, not that I've known a lot of famous people, everyone that said they've had the fame, the fortune, the success, the adulation, it always comes down to one thing at the end. It was all hollow and meant nothing.
Yeah. Exactly.
It was all self-serving, but then they realized the folly of chasing that.
Yes.
And
Chasing after the wind.
Yeah.
Well, we're so glad that you're able to be with us today. And, I I love when we have any guest that has a completely different perspective from something that we haven't heard before, carpentry or being a police officer. We've had police officers on before, but we didn't really talk to them about what it was like for them to be a police officer or what the job entailed at all. And not much. But so thank you. And thank you for putting up with John.
All these years.
For all these years.
I had a lot of training.
You're a blessed man. And so you want me to pray us? Okay.
Please.
Let me pray for us.
Or, I mean, Doug is welcome to. I just...
Please.
Okay.
I'll defer to the professional.
I was trying to help you out there.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, first of all, we just thank you. I don't think it could be put in better words than what Doug said, which is that we are just in awe. That however you ordered this world, that in the goodness, even of sacrifice, even of putting others before ourselves, even of ultimate sacrifice in what we see with people in martyrdom or people willing to put themselves in the face of death for others, that you have given life through that. Jesus, you said it simply, those who are willing to lose their life for me will find it. And so I just pray, Lord, that you would continue to bless us. I pray that you would continue to encourage us and our families and our loved ones to continue to be a foundation like Doug's grandmother, so that others may grow to know you and to know that sacrificial love, the love of a carpenter's son, a carpenter himself. And so we just pray that you would be with us, and we thank you for this time we had together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you for listening to Let the Bible Speak. If you'd like to support us, subscribe to the podcast by clicking that little plus symbol on your phone until it becomes a check mark. You can also share these episodes with a friend. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at letthebiblespeakpodcast@gmail.com. If you write us at letthebiblespeak@gmail.com, we will not receive your email, so make sure it is letthebiblespeakpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks.